What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We got a lot to get to, so I don't have a lot of time to fumble about and present you with my musings and my thoughts and my feelings and everything. We got a lot of meat in today's episode and a couple of really good interviews that I want to get to, so this will be short. I'm going to remind you about the Employee Jamboree September 21st. Make sure you are there for it. It's going to be awesome. Lots of great food, entertainment, maybe even some giveaways. So definitely mark your calendars for the second annual Liquid OFC Schmidt Bartow Employee Jamboree taking place at the Plattsmouth Terminal. Besides that, I'm going to say please subscribe to the show on whatever platform you listen to. It really helps us with our numbers, helps us figure out who's listening and on what platforms and even what country you're in. And we are international, baby. We got a whole list of countries that like to listen to this podcast. If you don't believe me, I'm going to run through them again because it's always fun to see where out in the great beyond people are tuning in to the Liquid Trucking Podcast from. So I'm headed to my statistics right now, my overview. You know, this month we don't have as many as we did last month, but we're still doing good and still pulled down 2 new countries. United States, of course, holding strong. What did you expect? We've got so many listens out of the United States. Thank you, Patriots. But how about Antigua and Barbuda? 17 listens, 1.3%. Out of the month came from Antigua and Barbuda. I'm wondering if maybe we had a driver vacationing there and he was catching up on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. It'd be interesting to find that out. We also turned in a few listens out of Guatemala. Welcome to the party, Guatemala. It's nice over here. Glad to have you. Ireland actually turning out quite a few listens over this last month. And let's give a shout out to those people lost over there in the country of Russia. We appreciate you listening. It's a long ways over there, but every listen that we get matters here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. So thank you to all of our domestic and thank you to all of our international listeners. It's a pleasure to be here with you each and every week. What are we talking about today? Well, today's episode has its own significance. And really kind of a significance that we are doing this episode so that we highlight it a little bit. I was talking with some drivers and some office staff members, and one thing that kind of came up as a theme is maybe the senior drivers don't feel like they're getting their just due. And it's not that they don't feel appreciated by the company. Obviously, they're still here, so they're doing pretty good as far as the work is concerned, and everybody's pulling their weight. I think what the senior drivers kind of want is for the younger drivers to utilize their knowledge base. These senior drivers have seen it all. We've had Polar Bear on this show a lot. He's going to join us here in just a moment with a man that's driven for Liquid almost as long as Polar Bear has himself. Actually, I think that Dan might be the number 1 guy driving the longest. Polar Bear might be number 2. These guys are going to come on here, and what you're going to hear from them is that they've pretty much seen it all. There's not a rabbit hole that you can dive down into that these guys haven't found their way out of. And they are trying to offer that knowledge to any new driver or, established driver. Anybody that wants to call and get that info, these guys want to give it to you. And I'm going to let that come all from their mouths here in just a second. But important when we jump into these next couple of interviews here to know the people that you're listening to when I'm talking to Polar Bear and Dan, they are Liquid Trucking. They have been here for a very long time. They saw it come up. They were here when it went from paper logs to ELDs. They were here when it grew from 4 trucks in a field to where it is now. And they've worked around the people that brought this company up from the ground and built it into the fantastic trucking company that it is today. So they're worth listening to. We've got some anecdotes from them, some little stories, and also just kind of a plea to some younger drivers here. Hey, if you're in a jam, give one of us a call. And I think you should definitely utilize it. If you're a new driver out there listening and things have been getting a little nerve-wracking lately, I think that this segment and then getting in touch with Dan and Polar Bear will probably ease your nerves a little bit. It's time to hear from some of our senior drivers and listen to all the experience they've amassed over the years.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Joining me next here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, I've got a couple of senior drivers that are well established with liquid trucking. And one of them you've heard from many times on this podcast. The other is making his first appearance. And I want to start by introducing him. His name is Dan Pijenowski, liquid driver. Dan, I'm sorry it took me so long to finally get you on this podcast, but we're finally doing it, man. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate the time.
Not a problem. I appreciate being on here.
Well, we're glad to have you, and you come highly recommended to us from many of the people at the office there for Liquid, and also a lot of Liquid drivers have mentioned your name before, so we're really happy to have the wealth of information that is you here with us. So, Dan, how long have you been trucking in general, and how long have you been with Liquid Trucking?
Well, I had a Class B license, a chauffeur's license, driving a propane truck and twin screws and just generally everything related to a Class B license when I came to drive for these guys, so I didn't think that they would ever hire me. And then I had my reservations when I pulled into the address and got to looking around. And when I started in 1998, OFC Schmidt was running out of a junkyard.
Oh, really?
So, yes. So when I pulled in there, it was like, do I want to get out or do I want to turn around and just leave? Because I had my reservations about this. But, you know, I went ahead and walked in and sat down and talked to Mike Bynes, and he didn't have any problem with it, and you're hired.
Wow.
So, yeah, I had to update my license to the Class A. I had to do the hazmat, the tanker, the whole thing, and from that point on, it's 26 and a half years later, I'm here.
Wow, that's great. Now, how hard was that transition for you to go from the Class B to the Class A? Because you didn't mention any experience with Class A before you got to OFC Schmidt. Was this your first foray into Class A?
Yes. Yep.
And how hard was that to learn? The hazmat stuff, all the plumbing, all that good stuff. Did it give you a challenge, or did you take to it pretty quick, Dan?
Well, I think I took to it pretty quick. I mean, there wasn't any training back then. Basically, I think, well, Polar Bears probably mentioned this before. Mike Bynes' training and orientation speech is pretty much don't screw anything up, threw me the keys and say, there you go. That was the training.
Kind of a kick you into the pool moment rather than put some floaties on you and float you out there, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, you know, Mike Bynes will mention this to you, and he stuck to it for a long, long time. He pretty much liked hiring people with farm background and agricultural background. So they were kind of common sense young men and had been around machinery before. And, you know, it wasn't a hard transition. It's not so much that anymore. They hire people from all different backgrounds, and I'm not so sure that was, you know, a great move, because a lot of guys who come here, they struggle. They struggle learning the tanker thing. Mm-hmm. And other guys just take to it right away.
Yeah, it's definitely a more complicated trucking job that you guys do for Liquid than you know, driving dry van or flatbed. And I know that those truck drivers face their challenges as well. But some of the things we've talked about on this podcast, you know, will definitely shed some light on the fact that every single pickup and drop off for you guys can be different in its own way. And that requires not only a vast amount of knowledge, but some attention to detail in what can be very stressful and uncomfortable situations. And, you know, I do know that there are some Liquid drivers that take some time off during harvest seasons because they are farmers and they need to go tend to their land. Which, you know, obviously, I think there's a lot of things come from farming that translate into trucking pretty easily.
Yes.
Well, I want to check in with our second guest here and see if he's done getting all of his things put away. We do have another driver on the line here. He's made plenty of appearances on this podcast before, and we're glad to have him back. Polar Bear, do you copy?
Marcus, very good to be here with you. Yes, I was out trying to help keep this company afloat.
Amen to that, man. Well, we appreciate it. I've got you here on the phone with Dan Pijenowski, and we were just talking about his background a little bit.
Hey, P-Bear.
Hello, Dan. Sorry, I'm back in my truck, ready to roll right now.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was listening to that and kind of verifying what everything Dan said. I just don't know him before here.
Sure. Well, one of the reasons we brought you guys both on today is because you both have such vast experience and vast knowledge of not only tanking, but tanking for liquid in particular. And, we haven't really given a lot of, I guess, kudos to you senior drivers. And we wanted to take this episode and give you the opportunity to not only take some credit and receive a pat on the back for your illustrious careers that you've built here at Liquid, but maybe hand down a little bit of knowledge to some of the newer drivers that are coming in and as you said, Dan, maybe struggling with it a little bit. Dan, I will start with you there. If you had some advice for some of these younger guys that you're seeing struggling a little bit, as a guy that's seen pretty much everything that there is to go on at Liquid Trucking, what would you tell a younger driver if they were just sitting there listening to you and soaking up all your advice?
Well, I would probably advise them to, and Polar Bear's going to know what I'm talking about. I'm going to advise them to try to get in contact with as many truck drivers, senior drivers, as you can, because the wealth of knowledge that a senior driver can pass on to you and get you past the struggling points, learning things, hands down, there is just no substitute for it. All the technology, all the Googles, because I know truck drivers today depend on technology so much. Mm-hmm. It isn't going to compare to what a senior driver can pass on to you because he's been there already. So I'm going to say be humble, be respectful, and the people who taught me, we can pass on that information on to you because all the old timers, the drivers who taught me, as long as you were humble and respectful to them, they had no problem passing on information to you. But you had to pay homage to them. You had to be a little humble, be a little respectful, which wasn't a problem for us back then. And they just passed on everything they knew to you, and we soaked it all up. I'm talking about guys like Dale Horseman, Ron Jorgensen, Jimmy Cosgrove, Big Jim Johnson, Normie, I never knew his last name. Big Carl, the Texan, never knew his name. Roy Lee, and let's not forget Hot Toddy.
Hot Toddy. I hear Polar Bear back there. Are those some names that really ring true with you, Polar Bear? Some guys that pass down some stuff to you as well?
Well, and it is, but I'm going to back up a step further. There wasn't 180 drivers here to pick from to ask. I mean,
No.
There was, when I got here, I think there was 32 or 35. So, and like Dan said, we didn't all have cell phones back then. We didn't get, you seen somebody in training and you said, hey, you look like you might need help. Here's my number. Don't call me how to raise a loaf of bread, but if you need help unloading, give me a call, and that's what I tell everybody. I'm not going to remember your name. I'm not going to remember your phone number. Call me, and if I don't answer, leave a message, and we'll call you right back.
Yep. And, just from my experience here, which has nothing to do with truck driving, the only thing it has to do with is communication. I can tell you right now from personal experience that both of you guys are great at getting back to me whenever you have the chance to. I've not had any trouble getting in touch with either one of you for the multitude of times. I mean, Polar Bear, you've been on the podcast here. This is probably your 8th or 10th appearance. Dan,
Yeah.
Dan, you and I had, 5-6 conversations over the phone before we ever got to this podcast recording. You guys are great at picking up the phone. You just need people to call you so that you can pass this information on, right, Dan?
Well, like I said, I think people put way too much emphasis on technology, on apps, because there's just no substitute when you've never been somewhere, you're struggling to learn the job, you're struggling to learn all the little intricacies that go along with that trailer and this trailer, and then to have someone who can calmly walk you through how to get somewhere and what you need to know, what you need not to say to the customer. It is just irreplaceable to have someone who's been there before. And Polar Bear will vouch for this, is that we've all helped each other in the past for everything. It might be where to stop at. It might be how do you get past this glitch on your electronic logs. Picking up that phone and calling another driver is just irreplaceable. I can't emphasize that enough. Everybody needs help.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right there. Go ahead, PB.
I was going to say, here's a really, really good example, and Dan will know exactly what I mean. When you come into Texas, coming towards Dallas, if you don't start at the 500, you're going all the way through, because there's a million truck drivers want to park there the same day. So Wendell Yoder, who you know, Kleich and I and he had to go to Dallas, and he's like, well, I got enough time. No, you don't. Unless you're going in at 3 o'clock in the morning, you need to stop at the 500 and give up the rest of your day, because you're going to end up violating 2 hours, maybe 3. Who knows? How long's a piece of string when you start violating, really?
Right, exactly. And without you having been in that situation before, or having firsthand knowledge of somebody being in that situation before, Yoder would have just ventured out on his way and could have gotten pinched there. So without that advice, and this is something that we talked about this with the Teenage Party Line episode, PB, because Yoder was on that episode with you. And that's knowledge that just kind of floats between you guys because you're communicating all the time. And you do that for your own mental health and your own well-being, and just so that you're not bored. But those party lines are a great way for information to change hands if that's something that you like to do.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, let me just say something here. The electronic logs, the OmniTracks that we use, they all come with addresses, phone numbers, contacts, all the things that the driver needs to do, like scaling, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But I would say probably 40% of the information on these OmniTracks is not up to date. It's not right. The person's gone that you're contacting. He's moved on to another job. The phone number's no good. You might have something on there that says, please call 2 hours ahead of time, and it doesn't mean anything. For example, when you're going to AGP in St. Joe, Missouri, it will have that information on it. They want you to call 2 hours ahead of time, but any other AGP, which this information will still come up, and it'll send everything. You don't need to call them 2 hours ahead of time. So I guess it takes some getting used to as to what information applies to where you're going, because the computer doesn't know it. It's just going to send you all this information that doesn't necessarily pertain to where you're going at. Mm-hmm. But when you call a senior driver or someone who's been there before, they can sort through all the clutter that comes through on the OmniTracks and tell you what you need to know and what you need to disregard.
Right, and that's knowledge that you can't just get unless you've been in that situation before, or you've experienced something similar before. So important to to use these resources, because again, I think this is an important aspect here. It's not only that you guys have this knowledge, but Dan, Polar Bear, you've been on this podcast so many times saying this exact same thing. You are willing to take these phone calls. It's not just that you're saying, hey, it would be a good idea for you guys to call a senior driver. You're saying, call me.
Yeah. Well, and Dan and I, in this aspect, are kind of the same. We I guess, want the calls. We want to help, because we've been through it. And one of my things I tell a lot of the newer drivers, when I first got hired here, we all had roper pumps. And if you remember a few episodes ago when we did the question and answer, Marcus, and that's what I told the drivers, when you've got a roper pump and you open that valve coming to you, that's all air. You got to know to bleed that off, or, you're pumping for 30 minutes realizing, well, I'm still full, so there's little things like that you learn. And, seemed like every load I had, I'm calling Bynes and saying, hey, this isn't working. This isn't going. I've got, and back then we didn't have directions of the pumps. We had to know which way it went. And that's why we had messes back then, because they never really taught us. I mean, Dan and I, we're old enough, we figured it out. We knew which way the pump went, but, and so finally after about, let's say the 6th, 8th time, I'm ready to quit, because I'm like, why is this happening to me, Mike? And, he's like, just calm down, just think about it. The next time this happens, you're going to know what to do. And it's automatically, you just go into your mind, oh, hey, let's try this. So.
And with Mike Bynes, when you worked here with Mike Bynes, he had his own little language. And you know what I'm talking about, Polar Bear, because when you call Mike Bynes to get your next load, it was no screwing around. It was all business. Yep. He had the phone stuck in the crook of his neck, a cigarette in his mouth, and he wanted to get the information to you as fast as he can so he could take the next phone call. And it was blah, 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 and you didn't dare say, what was that again? Make him repeat again.
And you had about a half a second to say, will you repeat that, Mike? Because if not, that second's up. Click there, you're on to the next call. Yep.
You thought the guy was pissed at you about something. You didn't know what. And it took me a year and a half to figure out, no, Mike's not pissed at me. He's just like that.
Yep.
That's just the way it was, because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have GPSs. If you had to call someone, you had to pull over and find the phone.
Well, go to the truck stop, what it was made for.
And I want to emphasize this, that we didn't have 911 markers.
Anyways, I think what he's getting ready to say, and I had a perfect example. I was taking a load of fertilizer down to Mississippi. Well, they would tell us, okay, get off the interstate, turn on this highway, go to the second gravel road. There used to be a big tree there, and then like when I was in Mississippi, go down this road and go a piece. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I live in Iowa. How long's a piece? Yeah. Oh, you'll go a little ways. Can you give me an idea? I went back and forth with, let's say 6-8 miles. Perfect. See?
Yeah.
So that's what Dan, I think, was getting ready to say is we didn't, you didn't have direct markers or what to look for or that.
Yeah. No, it's, growing up in a rural community like I did, there was a lot of that. Navigating before GPS was a complete crapshoot. It's all right. Go down to the Wilson's fence line, and then head to the Jackson's fence line. And once you've hit the Jackson's fence line, you need to go down 3 more fence lines. Now those are all Jackson's fields, but there's one Wilson field that sits in between the two. It's just. After a while, it is all experience. And if you don't have that firsthand experience, you're going to be out there running around in circles. And we're a little bit more spoiled now, I think, and we have more resources. But I think that the point of this entire conversation is that the guys that didn't have these resources when they came up, the guys like you and Dan, PB, that just got kicked into the pool, you guys really did learn this stuff the old-fashioned way. You took your lumps, you made mistakes, you listened to Mike Bynes, whether you can understand him or not, and you went out there and you made it work, and look, I'll tell you right now, first time I ever met Mike Bynes, I was terrified of the man. He's a great dude. He's just all business, man. He works.
He looks like he sounds like he's 8 foot tall.
Yeah, he does. He's got a great voice.
Paul Bunyan's brother or something. Yeah,
absolutely. That way of building knowledge has a way of kind of tempering you in the fire. When you aren't told what to do every single step of the way and you have to figure it out, you might come up with a better solution than what was there to begin with. And that's why this knowledge can be so important to pass down, because it's, in a lot of ways, it's farm knowledge, right? It's knowledge that doesn't get written in a book. It doesn't get memorialized in any way. It just lives in your guys' heads.
It's like you're sitting there at the end of the dinner table listening to Grandpa's stories.
Yep.
I mean, there's just no substitute for that kind of knowledge, that experience. It's just age. It comes with you. Sometimes you talk to a customer and you're talking to them on the phone and you'll tell them that I'll be here at such and such time and where are you located at? And the guy's telling you, 4 miles down this road, and but it's really not 4 miles, because once you get out into the sand hills in North Dakota and South Dakota, there's not a section of road every mile. But he's telling you 4 miles or 5 miles, and you, used to coming from an area that had a road every mile, you're counting the roads. No. You're doing this all wrong. And you're coming up on the road you think you need to turn at, but it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right, like where you need to turn at. And as you and I know, you're pretty hesitant about taking a loaded 18-wheeler down a sand or a dirt or a mud road if it's not the right one, because you might be in a world of hurt. So, and there wasn't a cell phone there to bail you out. Hey, I'm stuck. Come and get me, I had to walk several times after getting stuck just to find somebody. Sometimes you called ahead and told the rancher or the farmer, hey, I'm going to be there tonight. If you need me to unload, is that okay? Yeah. Well, what time you think you'll be here? Well, it might be 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Well, that'll be fine. Okay, I'm just letting you know so you don't come out with your shotgun and open fire on me. You needed to be courteous. This is his land, his property, and you need to let him know that you're going to pull on his property and not open fire on you. It's all of our business. I should say a good portion of our business back in the day was farm and ranches, molasses, fat, stuff like that. It's not like today. Polar Bear will vouch for this. What we do today is a cakewalk compared to what we did in the past. So when I hear little bits and pieces of the podcast that I have listened to, people in the office and people who weren't even born or still in high school at the time trying to take credit for why this company is so great, that's when I get a little irritated, because the people who I work with now, who you could call senior drivers, and the people who I mentioned earlier, the pioneers drivers, the Jimmy Cosgrove, the Dale Horseman, and all of them, those guys made the business. They established a foundation and the base for who we are today. Sure. And us senior drivers who picked up what they started, we were in the mud. We were in the blood. We sweated. We sacrificed. Has Polar Bear talked to you about spraying silage pits?
Not yet. Nope.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we used to do is to go to
just a
Westway, and we would load 23-ton, 24-ton of molasses, and then we would have to take it to western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, and you go to a guy's ranch, and you would have to stick all your hoses that were on the trailer together, plus the fire hoses that they told you to throw on before you got. And you're familiar with fire hoses, right, Marcus?
Yes, sir.
So you stick those all together. So you got 150, 200 feet stretched out across someone's property, and you're spraying silage pits. Some of the silage pits you can hit with 150 feet of hose, a 3-foot chunk of 2-inch pipe that's been hammered flat on one end so it gives a fan effect when you start pumping.
Uh-huh.
Some of those you can hit. Others, like I've been to before, go down to Sublette, Kansas, where those feedlots down there are 35,000 head, 40,000 head. So they have multiple silage piles that are just on top of the ground, and they're 6-7 acres across.
Wow.
Just rotting, moldy silage, and you got to crawl up on top of these silage pits, dragging this hose that's full of product, spraying these pits. Every time you put your foot down, you're stirring up the mold spores and the dirt and everything. So when you get out of there, you're coughing, you're wheezing. I remember going down to Sublette, Kansas and spraying this exact pit I'm talking about with Mark Linhart. Him and I, both of us had a load and we helped each other. It was 103 that day.
Wow.
And we were dragging hoses on silage pits, spraying these silage pits with this molasses mixture that once it cools and dries, it turns into a great big Snickers bar.
Right.
And the object of that is to keep the moisture and the rain from letting the silage rot. So it kind of puts a crust on the top of it.
Uh-huh.
But after we got done that day, we were hot. We were sticky. We're both coughing and wheezing. I had a fever for 3 days after that because of all the mold and everything that you breathe in your lungs. And this is just some of the silage pits we sprayed. You know?
And one big thing you forgot, Dan, was hope the wind's in your favor.
Oh, yeah.
Not because how many times, you know, the wind's blowing from 3 out of 4 directions and you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When you're all done spraying, you got to shuck off all your clothes. I remember going to a guy's farm spraying a silage pit, and I sucked off all my clothes by his machine shed and used his garden hose to wash off, just standing out there in my underwear.
Yeah.
So
changing clothes.
So it was a little bit tougher back in the day, and I think, you know, just to kind of touch on what you said there, Dan, and who, you know, who the credit should go to. I think that's one of the reasons that we brought this episode up in the first place, is to give some credit where credit is due. And one thing that I think is very important here is that as time moves on, as it always does, never going to leave a single one of us behind, going to drag us all into the future. It's important to remember who crawled so that you could walk, and it's important to remember why you walked so that others could run. You guys are kind of building this business, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's to the point where it is today. I think it's important to say it wouldn't have happened without the contributions of everybody that started and that moved with it into the future, and that went from 4 trucks in a field to 30 trucks, and from 30 trucks in a junkyard up to 100 trucks in a terminal. And
5 years.
Yeah, and
6
now
years.
to where you guys are. You know, it took the contributions of everyone, but those guys that were out there in the beginning, really, you know, trudging through silage pits and doing that type of work, you do deserve credit for why this company is as successful as it is today. And there was something else that you mentioned, Dan, that you mentioned it kind of in passing, but I think it's very important to touch on. The experience that you guys have, absolutely, it's the technical stuff, it's the driving, it's the safety, it's the hazmat, it's all the things, the plumbing. But let's not forget about the customer service edge. You guys have spent 20 some odd years, 30 some odd years learning how to approach these customers. And, you know, you do have to be careful if you're going onto somebody's farm that they don't come meet you with the shotgun. That could be something that could get out of hand really quickly. And with some of the deliveries that you guys are making, it's important to have the knowledge about, hey, you this is a guy that you need to talk to before you go in there. Don't just pull in. These are all tips that you guys can share and are willing to share if somebody reaches out and asks for them.
Well, I think, and Polar Bear will vouch for this too, is I think the last couple of generations of truck drivers who have come to work for us, the thing that irritates us is these resources are here. We're here. But yet the last couple of generations of truck drivers think they know everything when they come here. They want to start out top pay. They want a brand new truck. And I don't want to do that. I want this gravy run. Whoa, wait a minute here. When I got hired, Mike Bice put you through the test. You did 3 months or so of the dirtiest, crappiest work you could possibly think of just to test you.
Mm-hmm.
And he would test you. And once you got past that, once he knew that you were going to stay, then he'd give you a crappy job, and then he would give you a gravy train job, and then a crappy job, and then a gravy train job. The people who come to work for us today have no idea how easy they have it now. And they think because we have all this technology that they don't need to talk to someone. It irritates the hell out of me when you're in the same truck stop, the same customer, whether it be your shipper or your consignee, and you got someone who works at the same company who's 15, 20 feet away from you, and he's just sitting in his truck ignoring you. Won't wave, won't come over and talk to you or nothing. But, that's today's generation where when you go out with your wife and kids, they're all sitting there on their phone texting each other instead of sitting at the dinner table talking to each other. The social skills, talking to your customers, is just gone.
And it's such an important part of the job, too, because you piss the wrong customer off, and all of a sudden you guys don't have that account anymore. That affects everybody. That's not just you. That's the whole company that felt that. So these things are important to remember. And I have to ask this question. You'll have to forgive me here because I've been doing a pretty good job keeping it serious. But when you talk about a gravy job, are you talking about like an easier job, or are you actually hauling gravy? Because I know, I mean, you've got tanks. Like, it wouldn't be that far-fetched for you to haul some nice country gravy across, would it?
So I'm going to give a really good example, and I don't know that Dan's ever done it, but remember the Rhode Islands, Dan? It was no touch on both ends, and it was a 1,500-mile run, and some of them, they were out and back because we didn't have the load. So that's one of the best gravy runs I can think of. We just had to load it, and then you drove out there, and they unloaded it. You get out and BS with them, or you could stay in your truck. But
I've heard it numerous times showing up at a customer who hasn't had a lot of experience dealing with OFC Schmidt liquid trucking, and they say, hey, you guys are all right. You get out of your truck, you actually talk to people. Most guys, when they come here and deliver, they just sit in their truck, and they don't even talk to you. So social skills, getting out and talking to people, is a big thing, because when that consignee, that shipper is thinking about using you the next time, he's not thinking about the freight rate. He's not thinking about this or that. He's thinking about the last person he saw from OFC Schmidt Liquid Trucking. So when you get out of your truck, you need to be squared away, clean shaven, smelling good, got your uniform on, your pants and all that. You don't hop out looking like some frickin' bum.
Sure.
Because that is who he associates with that trucking company. He's not thinking about the email that he's getting from someone in the office. He's thinking about the last truck driver that got out.
Yep.
He doesn't want to think about the truck driver that sat there and told dirty jokes the entire time he was there.
Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
Talking his ear off.
No, it's a good point. And hey, we've got an episode back on our annals called The Gold Standard of Drivers, which I think is kind of what you're talking about. Liquid demands the gold standard of driver. You guys have to be more on your game because of what you're hauling than the standard insert truck driver here. And that extends beyond the knowledge of the driving and the plumbing and all that, and extends to the customer service and being friendly. And listen, I've talked to enough drivers here to know there's a lot of really good people working at this company, top to bottom, that are just good people that you would want to sit down and have a beer with or a coffee with, or people that, if your family was enjoying a nice picnic at the park and they stopped by to say hi, you'd be happy that they were there. So use that to your advantage. It would be my only advice, in that, even if you've got a customer that's had a terrible day and you can tell, if you get out and you just think, I'm going to kill this guy with kindness, his day has been shitty, I'm going to make it good for these next 15 minutes, whether he likes it or not, he'll remember that. That type of stuff sticks with people, whether you think it does or not.
Oh, I miss the farm drops and the ranch drops, because these are just good, soulful people. They just want to talk to you. It's not like where I'm at today in Chicago, where everybody in Chicago's got an attitude.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of truck drivers don't want to come here, because you hop out, you're happy-go-lucky, and the first thing happens, they bite your head off. Everybody in Chicago's got an attitude. It's just the Chicago thing. But delivering out on the farm, you got to talk to real people who appreciated you. Hell, there was one time where I delivered a load of molasses to a guy in Elm Springs, South Dakota. Now, I had forgotten when I talked to him the night before that he's on Mountain Time versus Central Time, so I actually showed up an hour earlier. And the guy hit the front porch, putting his coveralls on, his boots on. Sun's coming up, and I'm thinking, crap, I forgot about the whole time zone change thing. And he was okay with it. We just had to move a few things around so it would fit. But afterwards, he goes, hey, do you want to come in and have a cup of coffee? Sure. And that's the kind of thing you get from delivering on the farm and the ranches that I miss about the work we do today. But that guy went in there, poured me a cup of coffee. His wife was cooking scrambled eggs, breakfast pork chops, bacon, sausage, hash browns, the whole meal, everything. And I'm looking around in this house, and it's filled full of rodeo buckles, awards, 30 rifles hanging up. And he begins to tell me that that's his stepsons, and that him and his wife were rodeo stars themselves, and his stepson was Jesse Bales. Now, if you know anything about rodeo, Jesse Bales was a big-time rodeo circuit rider, and now he does a lot of announcing.
Yeah.
But I never knew the guy. I acted like I knew the guy, because he's telling me about all this stuff. Oh, yeah, but I had to go home and turn the TV on and find out who this Jesse Bales guy was. And then going to the local rodeos, you can hear stuff like that. But just good, wholesome people talking to you. And they appreciate a truck driver getting out and talking to them.
Yeah.
I really miss that.
Well, I guess maybe the best way that we could relive those days would be to have a little bit of that camaraderie get built up between the senior drivers and the new drivers. I mean, that's what we're here for. We've got you guys on. We've got two guys here with wealth of knowledge that are more than happy to share it. And as you've heard here, they've got some great stories to tell. And guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. I don't know if it feels like this to you, but we've been on here for almost 40 minutes. And to me, it feels like we've been talking for about 10. That always means that it's been a really good conversation. And I know that you guys have got a lot to do today, so I want to give you one more chance before we let you go here to say your piece, anything that you want here. The floor is yours. Dan, we'll start with you.
Well, as I said earlier, don't think that technology has taken over to where you can push the experienced guy, the senior driver, off the side. You don't need him anymore, because you'll find out that showing up at some place, somebody forgot to tell me about this, or somebody forgot to tell me about that, or maybe I shouldn't have said that. These are things that aren't going to show up on the Omnitracks or on Deliver Recon or anything like that. There is just no replacement for talking to someone who's been there before and had all these life experiences.
Well said there, Dan, and want to thank you for making your first appearance here on the podcast. If I have my way, we'll get you back on here again for sure. It was a pleasure having you on here this first time. Polar Bear, your turn, man. Anything that you want to say before I let you go?
Yeah, it's good to hear you on here, Dan. I didn't think you would, but I want to reiterate off of what Dan said. The farm drops, I used to keep a thing of bones in the truck with me just to make friends with the dog when nobody was out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, and also back then, they weren't as busy and as big as they are now. Now they've got no time for you. They've barely got enough time to, hook up over there, hook up to that red tank. If it don't fit, put it in this clear one. Come here, give me your paperwork. I got to go. You get 10 minutes with them. And that's what I tell them. I tell them, if I know you got stuff to do, you can go. You don't need to babysit me, but if you want to stay around and tell true stories, I'm here. And most of them leave. I don't know why. But anyways, I was thinking about this. I heard the last podcast, Marcus. There is absolutely no job in this company that I'm going to do, and that's going from the road to the desk.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that. Unless I'm like, can't move my legs, can't move my arms, can move my eyeballs, then maybe. But that's until I can't drive this truck anymore, I'm here.
Well, I know that there's, that's kind of where that episode idea came from is there's a lot of drivers like you, Polar Bear, that would say you're going to have to pry the steering wheel out of my cold, dead hands before you'll ever find me in an office. And so I figured let's talk to some of the guys that don't feel that way and hear what it is that got screwed up in their head that made them want to go sit in an office all day rather than see the country. But, it was a good episode. We found out the motivations there a little bit from some of those guys, and hopefully their experience on the road helps you guys out there as well. Dan, Polar Bear, can't thank you guys enough, man. I love talking to you guys. I love hearing the stories. I'm going to keep in touch with both of you, if that's all right. Dan, like Polar Bear said, I didn't know if we were going to get you on here, but you did fantastic your first time, man. I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Well, I actually kind of liked being on here. I mean, I didn't want to be on here and everybody to think that I'm on here, this is my glory time, my ego stroking right now, because that's not why I came on.
Right.
I came on to emphasize senior drivers and how little they're being used and how disrespected they seem to be when we have this vast resource, this vast library of knowledge that's not getting used.
Well,
and that's why I came on.
And I think you did a good job, Dan. I really do, because you said it, and you just said it again, and you know what? We'll put the period on it here. These guys are out here to help you, and you have to call them if you want the help. But I guarantee you, Polar Bear and Dan, they're both going to grab the phone, pick it up, and give you whatever you need from them. So utilize that if you're out there listening and having a tough time, especially if you're brand new. These guys can teach you more in 10 minutes than what you'll learn in 5 days on the internet. So just remember that. Dan and Polar Bear, please stay safe out there. Keep the shiny side up. And we'll talk to you again next time, okay, gentlemen?
Okay.
All right, Marcus, always good talking to you.
You too.
Thank you, Marcus.
All right, next up here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, I've got 2 more drivers with a pocket full of experience each, and so glad to have them on the air today. Please welcome back to the show, Liquid driver Matt Kleich, making his, 60-second appearance, something like that. What's up, Matt?
Not much, Marcus. How are you?
I can't complain at all, man. It's a beautiful day where I'm at, and I'm like a week and a day away from going on my first ever antelope hunt here in Central Oregon, so I'm doing backflips, man. And on top of that, I have a brand new thing of smoked salt and pepper made by the one and only Matt Kleich that he mailed to me, and I've been putting it on everything. I put it on an Oreo cookie the other day. Some of the best damn smoked salt and pepper I've ever had. I can't thank you enough for sending that to me, Matt.
Hey, no problem. I appreciate the shout out. I really do. I've worked 5 years on that stuff, so.
You can tell, man. Where can people get it? Let's give you a plug. Is it something that you're planning on marketing to the masses? Is this you only get some if you know Matt? How do I get my hands on more?
So right now, it's real basic. Me and my daughter and my girlfriend. My daughter's working on the Facebook. She actually got the YouTube page up and going. She's working on TikTok. Once the LLC is final, I think I got another 3 or 4 days to go for that. We'll actually start building a website. Once the website's up and running, we'll be able to put sales on there. We'll put sales up at Facebook and YouTube and do videos and stuff. You'll be able to do it. Our email address is where we're going to want people to email us for orders right now. And believe that's Pitbull Barbecue and Spices at Gmail. But I can get that information a little bit later to you, Marcus. But right now, it's going to be Facebook. Everything's a progress right now as far as growing the company. You know, those growing pains. And we're hoping here in about the next 3 months to be able to produce enough to get on Amazon so people can buy it through Amazon.
Awesome. Well, we will update that as it comes along. Stay tuned here to the Liquid Trucking Podcast as Matt's new barbecue and spices company kind of grows right before our eyes. I am a guinea pig. I am more than happy to be one for anything else you need me to try, my friend. You've got my address.
We got plenty of stuff coming.
Okay, cool.
We got plenty of stuff coming. So.
Well, I will love it, man. And we'll keep plugging you on here because we want to help you grow that business and follow your dreams there. You're very good at what you do. And I also want to welcome to the show, making what I think is only his second appearance, Liquid driver Jason Krayenhagen. Jason, thanks for coming back, man.
Hey, no problem, Marcus.
And what's your side hustle? You got a spice company or a soap company, or maybe you make candles or something like that? What do you got to offer?
A slave to my wife, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Hey, that's a good husband. That's a good husband, man. Write a book about it,
Yeah.
The book could just be titled "Yes, Dear: The Story of Jason Krayenhagen."
Yeah, I wish those funny to-do lists would get shorter. They keep making those pieces of paper longer to hang on the fridge. And make fun of them.
Well, gentlemen, good to have you back on here. I think the last time we had you on together might have been, was it the Teenage Hotline episode?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Man, that one, I'm still rolling my neck out from laughing so hard at that episode. If you didn't check that one out, just go search it out. I think it's episode 28, maybe. The Teenage Hotline, we had Polar Bear on with Matt and Yoder and Jason and a couple other guys. Their names are escaping me right now, but one hell of a fun. Yeah, there you go. One hell of a fun episode. Maybe the most fun we've done. And I've actually heard you guys from some other drivers that are saying, hey, get those guys back on the air. So this one isn't meant to be a Teenage Hotline episode, but just know that there's demand out there in the market for it. So we're going to do that again for sure. All right.
Where's me?
Well, on to business here, fellas. As always, it's a pleasure to have you back here on the show. And today we're talking about senior driver appreciation. Now, I'll start with you here, Matt. Are you considered a senior driver amongst the ranks at Liquid Trucking?
I don't know if I'm considered a senior driver. I've been here going on 7 years and kind of seen a lot as I've been here. I've learned a lot with this company. And so, I mean, I got 7 years of experience with them, and I've had some of the, as far as I'm concerned, the best of the best help me through my trials and tribulations as a tanker.
Okay, and let's go ahead and call some of those names out, because earlier in the show, when I had Dan Pijenowski and Polar Bear on, they mentioned some names of guys that I know have probably been retired for a decade plus, and it was really cool to hear some of those names come up because they rattled them off like a junior high football roster, man. They knew every single guy. They knew their CB handles. Who are some of the guys that helped you out that you call the best of the best, Matt?
First would be my first trainer, which was Mark Lenhart. He's still with us. Greg Olween, I believe he moved down to Texas. He's no longer in the area, but he was one of my trainers. Those two guys, anything I needed when I first started, they were right there. Following that, Mike Wilson, he was always available. Even though he wasn't a driver, he was right there to help me out. You know, when I first started, Mike Wilson told me, he says, if you can make it past the first year, you will have this job whooped. And I lived by that, you know, and I pushed through the first year, and it was a lot of fun. That first year of really learning how these tanks and stuff operated, you know, and the different customers and the different products. And, you know, after that, the next one in line is when I went under the Chris Baltushis, as far as teaching you know, different things. That man's got a lot of knowledge when it comes to getting trailers unloaded and things you can do to reduce problems. So that would be the four that I would name.
Well, and you know, we had Chris on last week, our episode called From Pounding the Pavement to Pushing Paper, Former Drivers in the Office, and you heard some of that knowledge come through from Chris. He seriously can get you out of just about any jam you can get yourself into. And it sounds like some of these other guys that helped you out, Mike Wilson, also on that episode, they were instrumental in your basically building your career at Liquid Trucking, it sounds like, Matt.
Absolutely. Those four guys, Mark Lenhart, one of the best as far as I'm concerned. You know, he just kind of walked with you. You know, then Greg Olween, you know, these guys were just right there, old school, not a lot of technology based. Just when you're doing this, do this. When you're doing that, do that. You know, just right there.
Yep. And that's what, you know, we talked to Polar Bear and Dan about it, and I'm going to reference that conversation quite a few times here because I think there's going to be a lot of similarities here that come up. But those two guys, Dan and PB, they're waiting for those kinds of questions now. And they have, I mean, that's 1 and 2 in the company, if I'm not mistaken, as far as tenure on the road. And so, you know, we've got guys like that. You guys came up with guys like that. This is something that Liquid has always had. And it's definitely smart to utilize it, man. Talk to those guys. They can give you knowledge that you would have never been able to figure out on your own. And I see you, Matt, and also probably you, Jason, sort of turning into that person yourself. Jason, I want to turn it to you. Do you see yourself as a senior driver at Liquid at this point in your career?
I don't know. Me and Matt pretty much started about the same time. So a lot of the names he rattled off, I've got to probably say have a lot to do with where I'm at today. I mean, I would probably add, I'd say maybe Jerry Goff to it. I had to train with him for a little bit. He did good, but yeah, Chris, by the time I got done training and got released up north to Bardo there, I mean, well, Chad Hankey, Bo's brother, I rode around him for a week. He was a trainer at the time up there. But Chris is, he just knows so much, and it didn't take much just to call him if you had any questions, you know. And I don't know. I always think some of my benefits from the thing is I started in December, and if for the guys that are listening that know anything about some of these chemicals and things will freeze. That stuff freezes at 50 degrees. So you go through a lot of different scenarios and deal with a lot of crap in the winter. It's a little tougher, but I don't know. I made it through the winter, and the summer just seemed like a breeze to me. But
Sure. Well, I mean, it kind of sounds like sometimes in that you get into that scenario where it might be better in this job to get kicked into the pool a little bit and have to figure that stuff out early on rather than wait.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I was a trainer for a little while. The company decided to go a different way and like went with a little less trainers because they maybe had too many. I don't really know the whole story behind it, but that was my biggest thing with them guys was I worried about a lot of these guys that start in the middle of the summer when, you know, roads are good, everything's moving well, products just flying off and flowing and leaking is not, you know, you can deal with it, but you start dealing with like frozen hoses and frozen valves and blowdown valves and all that. I mean, a lot of these guys that start in the summer are going to probably need us in the winter, and that's what I always tell them, you know, I'm here for you. You got my number. Just, you know, you're probably going to forget a lot of it, but I'm just going to call me.
Sure. Well, that's an interesting part of this interview because that right there, go ahead and call me, is something that Dan and PB tried to drive home is that you guys that do have the knowledge, whether it be 7 years or 20 plus years worth of knowledge, are all, for the most part, willing to share it. I haven't had one person come on this podcast and say, don't call me when you've got a problem. Everybody seems to kind of be raising their hand and saying, hey, call me, I'll help. It seems like I'm getting that vibe from both of you guys.
They can call us. You know, if we can't figure it out, somebody has, you know. And first and foremost, you know, these new guys, these new recruits, the Bardo drivers, you know, that are under Corey and Angie there in the office, call Chris. There isn't anything he can't get you out of for the Bardo drivers. I mean, you know, he's even helped me with some stuff that I didn't know about, you know, that was never trained on. So for the Bardo drivers, get up there and call Corey. Corey will put you in line with Chris, you know, and he'll help you out. And then if we're available and we can help you out, we will, you know, we'll help.
Sure. And just be ready to take your lumps like anybody else. If you call and ask a stupid question, someone might tell you it's a stupid question, but then they'll also help you fix it, right?
Oh,
yeah. You know, we'll give you a lump or two to let you know about it.
Well,
yeah, we'll get you going. We'll get the process going and get you done with your job. But as soon as we get a chance to talk again,
yeah, we're going to make fun of you. You know, it's what we do. It's how we do it.
It keeps us all honest. Honestly, it really does. It's something that, you know, I remember when I first met my wife, she, the very first night, came to like a college house party with just me and all my dudes playing beer pong, and then her. And she, later on in the night, I think looked at me and was like, you guys haven't said one nice thing to each other all night. Like, do you like each other? I was like, these are my best friends. I would die for these people. And then immediately turn and flip one of them off just to let them know that I would die for you, but not tonight, pal. Like, I got things going on.
Yep.
It's a very important part of the culture at Liquid and the camaraderie that you guys all have. And, Dan and PB really did drive it home and say that sometimes they feel like the newer generation isn't as apt. The newer generation of drivers isn't as apt to call somebody. They would kind of rather either figure it out on their own or maybe Google something and see if they can figure it out that way. What would you say, Matt, to that? Do you think that the newer generation of drivers is less likely to call you when they have a problem like this?
I'm going to be as positive as I can with the answer on this. I think the newer generation of drivers needs to get a lot of experience pulling dry van or reefer before they step into this industry. Tanker is tough, and you have to have some mechanical aptitude and drive to do it. They either want it to happen right now or they struggle to make it happen with what they know. Mm-hmm. And Google will never, ever answer any question in some of the scenarios that we're in. It just can't. I think that they should know that we want them to call us. Call the senior drivers, call Dan Pijenowski, call Polar Bear, call anybody, call your dispatcher, call somebody, because you don't want an accident. And some of the stuff we play with is zero tolerant material. And these new drivers need to know that.
For sure.
Like I said, it's just more important to make sure that they reach out, because the technology is good, but the technology is not right now, especially with some of the products we haul.
Sure. Jason, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think the younger generation maybe should take a page out of your guys' book and be willing to call and face the problems and just try to get them fixed?
Yeah, I got to double down on what Matt says. I know some of the stuff. I know what I haul like almost every day. About all I do is Google could tell you something, but it's not going to hurt you to where if Google's wrong, what you're hauling, and if something was to go wrong, it's going to leave you're going to have a permanent scar. It's going to remind you of that day for the rest of your life. So you need to, there's nothing wrong with calling and asking for help. And, instead of being a hero or, thinking that you're going to prove a point, and, it's not a race to see how fast you can get it figured out as much as it is just like getting it figured out as safe as you can, getting back home to your family, your friends in one piece, and not enjoying the job. It can be a job you can enjoy if you just do it right.
Absolutely. And utilize all of these resources that you've got. And I want to make something clear here. When I mentioned Googling something for an answer, I don't have any hard proof that that's something that drivers are doing within Liquid, and I don't want to make it sound like that's the case.
No.
I think that more what we're trying to say here is that, that's WebMD. If you get on there and you're looking for information there, you're going to get the wrong information and you're going to be scared for the rest of the day. The right information comes from this wealth of knowledge that all these drivers have built over, decades plus of experience. And it can be hard, right? It's never easy, especially when you're new at something, to take some egg on your face. Everybody wants to make a good first impression. Everybody wants to say, hey, I'm qualified for this job, but you just can't know it all when you first get out there.
No.
I'm still learning today,
Oh, yeah. If you don't learn something every day, or, I feel like there should be something that catches you every day that was just like, that's new. I just think if you're not, then you're getting too complacent, maybe.
Sure. It's a process. It's something that never really ends. Your guys are always adding knowledge to your bucket. And that's kind of what, Dan and Polar Bear were alluding to, is that hey, we might know a lot. We don't know it all. There's always something else to learn. And that's probably a big part of not becoming arrogant is knowing, hey, there's always something. And you know what? You guys you kind of set me up here to put you on the spot. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to. Matt, I'm going to start with you. You said you learn something every day. What did you learn today?
I learned you can't use an air compressor to blow molasses off a trailer because it's too thick.
Look at that. I put him on the spot and he nailed it. Jason, I'm going to do the same thing to you. What'd you learn today, man?
What did I learn today? Well, it's a run I've done about 100 times a year. So,
learn something every other day. All right, that's the message.
yeah. Well, I'm just trying to sit here thinking like I don't really know like today other than I don't know. Yeah, Missouri drivers are still stupid, and
Oh boy.
there's still hair on the blinker from where Matt hit his head on the trailer. So,
Oh boy.
I mean, I wanted to send a picture to him of it, like, hey, you still got hair on this thing.
Oh my God! Did you hit your head that hard on a trailer?
Yeah, I can send you a picture, Mark. It's not pretty. I got my bell rung pretty hard.
Were you walking backwards or something? I mean, I feel like they're pretty big.
Well, the trailer is pretty big, and I just turned and walked to the site, just what happens,
Yeah.
Someday, at 50 years old, things happen.
Boy,
I haven't started to wet my pants on a regular basis.
And a DPC trailer can haul 3 loads, and you can air it off with 1 tank of gas 3 times. But after the 3rd time, you better be putting gas in it.
he learned something. He learned that today.
There you go.
Give him some party horns for it, man. He deserves it. He deserves it.
Good job.
Oh, man. Well, listen, fellas, I've taken up enough of your time today. I want to go ahead and give you the opportunity that I give everybody on this podcast. If there's anything that you want to say to anybody that might be listening, friends, family, coworkers, or anybody else at large, the floor is yours. Jason will go ahead and give you the floor first, my friend.
I just want to tell everybody that's listening that you're not alone out here. Everybody, my first time was very nerve-wracking. And I remember the day I got let go after riding around with my trainer, and I was scared, I don't know if I can cuss on here, but crapless, like, what the heck?
You can say shitless. It's okay.
Okay, I was scared shitless. Really scared. But, it got through it, and then just started combining load after load after load after load, and it just started coming to me, and then it's don't give up. Keep pushing through. It gets better and easier. And I'm not going to put my phone number out here
Nope.
for everybody.
Don't expect you to, but there's ways that they can find it. If they want your
call
phone
the
number.
safety office, yeah, they can get it through them. I'm giving them permission to give it to anybody that wants to talk to me about anything, and I'm there for them.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. And do it, you guys. I'm telling you right now, these guys have a lot of knowledge, and they're pretty fun to talk to. If you haven't gotten that out of this conversation yet, you will share some laughs as well. Matt, it's your turn, my friend. Anything you got to say before I let you go?
Pretty basic, just stay safe, take your time. They promote it. We get paid by the hour, so take that into consideration. Nobody's in that big of a hurry. There's no reason for an accident, so slow her down and take your time. And then a shout out to the teen hotline and all them boys, Yoder and Johnny Fry and Berto and all them boys. And the Pitbull Barbecue will be cooking for the Jamboree this year. So hope to see you guys out there.
Heck yeah, man. Pitbull Barbecue at the Employee Jamboree. That's going to be the 21st of September, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure that you got your calendars marked. Because you want to try some of that smoked salt and pepper and all of the other things that Matt's cooking up. It's going to be a real fun one, man. Thank you guys both so much. Stay safe out there, and we'll be in touch with you soon, okay?
All right, Marcus. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Wow, awesome stuff there from Dan, Polar Bear, Matt, and Jason. Can't thank those guys enough for coming on the show. I say it a lot on here, and I'm going to continue to hammer it home. This show is great because of you, the Liquid employee, the Liquid driver. Anybody that wants to contribute to the show is more than welcome to. And I definitely want to drive that point home again. Get in touch with your dispatcher. Get in touch with your driver manager. Get in touch with anybody at the office or another driver that you know. They probably have Dan or Polar Bear's number, or even Matt or Jason's. Who knows? Maybe they've been inducted into the teenage hotline. But these guys, they did an awesome job coming on the show and just sharing their knowledge and trying to kind of reach out here. But really, It's the lessons that you're going to learn far beyond this show by utilizing these guys as a resource that are really going to impact you here. So please talk to somebody that's got their number. Listen, I wanted to get them to put it on here for sure, but they thought better of it. They're not going to share their numbers on this podcast where somebody that's listening in from Russia can pick up the number and give them a phone call and try to sell them, I don't know, spam that's worth over $1 million, some kind of internet scam. Who knows? I totally understand. I don't put my phone number out on this podcast, and I tell you guys to get in touch with me all the time. So totally not something I expect, but there are plenty of people out there that have these guys' contact information and they can get it to you. So make sure to utilize them, because not only are they an absolute overwhelming wealth of knowledge, but they're some of the nicest dudes you'll ever talk to. They're a lot of fun. They know how to laugh. They know how to laugh at themselves. And it just makes it that much more fun to get on the phone with them, just to pick their brains a little bit. So thanks again to Polar Bear, Dan Pijenowski, Matt Kleich, and Jason Krayenhagen. You guys made this episode awesome. I'm going to get out of the way. We're running a little bit over time here. Don't forget to mark your calendars for the second annual Employee Jamboree, September 21st. At the Plattsmouth Terminal. I've been your host, Marcus. Keep the shiny side up and stay safe out there, drivers. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.